Can I get your name and can you spell it, please?
It's,
your title.
all right, Jennifer Letts, Mayor of Sisters, JENNIFERLETZ.
Perfect. Well, obviously we're working on a big story about a tsunami. How is the city of Sisters prepared for it as of now?
Well, the tsunami isn't the first thing that we prepare for here. We've definitely been having a lot of talks about wildfire preparedness before the flat fire and obviously after the flat fire. It was a great exercise for the community and for the city government to understand where we were well prepared and where we weren't. So we're going to keep having those conversations and really start to prepare for the next fire, because it's not if but when. Any preparations I feel like we make for a wildfire event are really going to just be very applicable to any natural disaster. The other major risk for Sisters Country that's been defined in our hazard plan is a winter storm. However, we also understand, especially from our experiences from the 2020 Labor Day fires, we did get a number of people coming over from the Mackenzie River Valley that could evacuate in this direction and who weren't cut off from the fire to evacuate down Eugene. They did end up in Sisters and were spread out through Central Oregon. So we saw a little bit of that then, of evacuees coming into the area. So I think anything that we're doing to prepare for wildfires is going to be helpful in the greater scheme of things. So this hasn't been a topic for us specifically of this particular event and the impacts in our community. Obviously, Redmond and all Central Oregon is working hard on developing Core 3, that facility in Redmond that will handle, hopefully be the center of response, not only for the region but for the state. However, I do have concerns of our ability of our passes and our highways from the valley, to withstand even a small amount of earthquake shaking. Doesn't take much for rocks to come down and block highways. I'm personally really, curious of how much people would actually access and be able to use Sandium Pass, maybe in the beginning, to move over to Central Oregon if they needed to get out of the valley. That is kind of a concern going forward. So it's one of these questions that I think it's really important for us to be prepared for some sort of influx of people. We know Sisters is a small city and we have limited resources. I think the ultimate idea would be to get people to move to where there's more resources, like Redmond or Bend. However, we're the first stop. We're the first community, so we're the first gas stations. We're the first water supply and sewer system. We'll be the first kind of community that has electricity, hopefully still at that point. So it definitely is something that needs to be kind of in the back of our minds as we're continuing to do disaster preparedness.
So obviously one of those big impacts, as you mentioned, were a large number of people coming to Sisters as the first stop. If people get stuck in Sisters, is there infrastructure or a plan in place to be able to make sure there's enough gas in the city for cars? Is there enough infrastructure to bring in mass amounts of food? Things like that.
Well, we as a city, we would have some capacity. I think we would be limited on the number of people we could serve. Obviously, we have public facilities like schools, our Parks District, for instance. Our building was used during the flat fire to house firefighters who worked at night. So they shut down their facilities specifically just for those people to sleep during the day and be able to shower and eat there. So we know that we have some capacity for a certain amount of people. Obviously, there will be evacuees from a great disaster like Cascadia has the potential to create. But we're then also going to have to, as Central Oregon, be housing emergency responders as well, the people to help out with that situation, the people to help with the evacuees as well. So there's a lot to think about there. I mean, I know the city, for instance, has a fuel trailer And that fuel trailer has been shared with other areas during incidents like the 2020 fires, you know, but again, what we have are pretty minimal. And so that's kind of a question for us, is that something, you know, do we want to increase our capacity in case of events like this? Or do we want to just build better relationships with other communities like Redmond and Bend, and have a system to be able to get people to move to those locations where there might be better services? You know, we certainly have the potential to be a log jam here. You know, we have 3 state highways that congeal into one over Santiam Pass, and then feed directly into Sisters before they can be kind of spread out to other communities. You know, so just even you know, working with agencies like ODOT to just make sure traffic is flowing safely through the community. You know, obviously obtaining fuel is going to be a huge challenge if there is a Cascadia event. You know, a lot of the fuel comes down from Alaska to a refinery in Washington, and then is stored in the Portland area for the most part, and those facilities are severely damaged. Fuel is going to have to be coming from other directions like California or Idaho. You know, so that will be impacted. You know, so yeah, there's a lot to think about.
You know, one of the things you mentioned was ODOT. Obviously, the ODOT site has been saved, for lack of a better term. In Sisters, how important is that for a Cascadia event to happen?
You know, again, we haven't talked about this specific event, but the staff that we have here, which is usually around 6 people when they're minimally staffed, is really critical to maintaining and keeping the highway open. But you know, this is personnel that also helps with, you know, evacuations, or if there's an incident, even if it's just a car accident and it's blocking a part of the highway or all of the highway. I mean, that's the personnel that manages that, keeps the first responders safe, keeps traffic flowing, keeps commerce flowing. So those, you know, ODOT is a critical partner in this. They would also be the people responding to that if there were any, you know, landslides or any damage to the highway. You know, they would be the ones making sure that the highway was at a state where people could at least pass, you know, slowly and safely, you know, over to the Central Oregon if they needed to.
What kind of state preparation has been talked about to you being so important within the Central Oregon community?
You know, there's a lot of, I think, you know, I have a background in emergency response, and I studied a lot of geology in college. You know, so, you know, this Cascadia event has been in the back of my mind for decades. And, you know, we know that the last event happened in the year 1700, and, you know, science shows us that this is potentially every 300 to 500 year events, and so we were definitely in that window. You know, so personally, this has always been in the back of my mind, and so I've always felt that, unfortunately, the state preparation is not near where it needs to be in regards. I feel like the level of knowledge and acknowledgement that this could occur has certainly risen over the years. It's a topic. It's a Cascadia event is a phrase people understand now. It's not something you have to explain, at least. So that's half the battle, but the other half is the hard part of you know, getting the coordination, the infrastructure, and having that trickle down, you know, to municipalities and even small communities. Not seeing a lot of that personally as an elected official. I can't speak for our staff. I'm sure that they're more engaged on some of these topics with their partners, but certainly would like to see more engagement from the state. Obviously, state has lots of competing needs for attention and funding, and it's hard, especially as Americans, we don't have a great track record of preparing for disasters like other countries have. You know, Japan, for instance, is well ahead of us, you know, in their ability to prepare and respond to a tragedy. You know, we are certainly behind in that respect, and would really like more attention put to this. And I feel like what the nexus needs to be that these preparations if it's maybe specifically for Cascadia, it's kind of finding the nexus of where these preparations can also have other benefits to us now, or benefits for another disaster that might occur, a wildfire or a flood or anything like that. So I think the more bang for the buck we can get on these preparations, I think is better and will be more palpable at in the State House and also for just everyday citizens.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I just think that it's still critically important that citizens, understand the impacts of an event like this, understand that you may not be home when this happens. You might be at the coast vacationing. You might be in the valley where there's still going to be significant impacts. And to always kind of, be aware of your surroundings, understand your escape routes, and also, make sure that you have go bags or always travel in your vehicles with maybe even just a basic change of clothes or some food and water. I mean, that's just sound advice for traveling over the pass in the winter every year. So understanding that there's that personal responsibility side of it, and to make sure that you have an ability in your household, whether you're a renter or homeowner, that you have at least some stores of food and water. Likely there will be no power. You might lose access to treated water for a certain amount of time. Just having that ability, even to be prepared for a short period of time is going to make a huge difference, because an event like this is going to impact the state of Oregon, not for days, but for years. And everything you can kind of do at that personal level is going to help the state respond and recover from that event.
Awesome. Works for me if it works for you.